Nothing But the Words, episode number 121. Keep Your Promise to Your Readers, featuring author of Permission to Offend, Rachel Luna. Hey there, and welcome to Nothing But the Words. I'm your book coach, Candace L. Davis. I hope your week and your writing are both going really, really well. Today, we have Rachel Luna on with us, and I want to tell you a little bit about Rachel before we dive into her interview. Rachel Luna is an entrepreneur, certified master coach, international speaker, and host of the Permission to Offend podcast. Her recently released Permission to Offend book was a #1 new release in women in business on Amazon. It's a fantastic book. I love it, and I love Rachel. Welcome to Nothing But the Words, Rachel. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me, friend. I'm very excited to be here.
So, in full disclosure, Rachel is my client. I coached on her book, and she is also my coach. She coaches me in her mastermind. She coaches me on my business and life in her mastermind programs. My second year working with Rachel, and I had a great time coaching her through her book. So, we are friends and we work together. That being said, tell us about Permission to Offend, Rachel. What made you write this book?
You did. You made me write this book. I don't even know what that's the question we're starting off with, really?
Yes.
This is all your fault, Candace.
I'll happily take the blame for a best-selling book.
Well, first, I just want to take a step back about, for me, what this relationship has meant. And I love that we have been each other's clients. And for anyone listening, we pay each other.
Absolutely.
So there is always that exchange of resources, exchange of time, of value, and money. And that's really important for me I'm on this like pulpit, if you will, of reinforcing the message that we pay our friends.
Yeah.
Love to pay our friends. We love to support our friends, not just in our words or actions, but also where our dollars and cents. And so for me, I already knew that I wanted to write a second book. I had self-published the first book many years ago called Successful People Are Full of Crap: Courage, Resilience, Authenticity, Perseverance. And I knew that there was another book in me, but I didn't want to self-publish it because I wanted to be paid to write the book. That was something that I felt I needed, that motivation, that knowing that someone else was counting on me to finish it and that I was contractually obligated to finish it. And so when I self-published my first book, by the way, I wrote that book all on my own. I hired a writing coach. I can't remember her name, but I remember her face, and she was super sweet and nice. But I hired her for like 1 or 2 sessions. And a regret that I have was that I didn't have a coach with me for the entire process. That would have made the difference. And that was the difference maker with Permission to Offend. So when I decided I wanted to write a second book, I knew I needed help. Our mutual friend, your other client, Patrice Washington, connected us. And you and I began writing a very different book.
So different, Rachel.
Yeah.
Totally different.
A totally different book. And I think that book was going to be called Girl Confident. And I was using that book to be sort of like the calling card book.
Yeah.
When I made that decision, you and I had spoken about, what the book would be about. And I was also really swept up in the momentum of what the online marketers were telling me was that you need a book that you can write in a weekend, and that'll be your calling card book. This book should be your signature course in written form. And I feel like if a reader is going to invest their time and their money, I want to give them stuff in the book. I want them to walk away with actionable steps and principles. So you and I worked on Girl Confident, and it just wasn't the right book. It started to become more of a memoir, even. I don't know if you remember that, because
yes,
I was
like definitely my do.
Stuff. And I was like, okay, we're not going to release this book. And that also, Candace, was the value of having you by my side to be able to make that tough decision of, this is not the book that we're going to finish. This is not the story we're going to tell. And I think that if I had been left to my own devices, I probably would have self-published another crappy book with all of my secrets. and all of my business out on Front Street. So fast forward a couple years later, a client of mine had just been given a book deal. And shout out to Lauren Messiah. We can name names. Her name is Lauren Messiah.
Her
She
book is
is,
great, by the way. I love it.
right? Style Therapy is the
Yeah.
name of that book. She's a stylist, but she also teaches people how to become stylists. So she had just gotten the book deal for Style Therapy. And at the time, she was my client. And she says, when are you going to put your book out? There is something extra special about your clients telling you, keep up with me.
Wow. And I can see Lauren saying that too.
Yeah. And so I was like, I don't want to write a book. She was like, yes, you do. You have a book in you. You've talked about it. You've wanted to, this has been a dream of yours. Go get a publisher, finish your proposal. And I said, you know what it really is? I don't want to write the proposal.
Wow.
That was what it was. I didn't want to write the proposal. I later, as I started writing the book with your help, realized that not only did I not want to write the proposal, but I didn't want to tackle the three things we actually tackle in the book: judgment, rejection, and defamation.
Ooh.
I didn't want anybody to judge my book proposal. I definitely didn't want the rejection that is part of the job. Rejection is part of the job, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an author, if you're a mother, a wife,
Yeah.
a preacher, a teacher, like it's part of life. And we so often try to tiptoe around it. We're avoiding pain and disappointment so much that we are then castigating ourselves to pain and disappointment of not actually fulfilling our dreams. So, which pain and disappointment do you want? Do you want the pain and disappointment of rejection as you pursue your dreams? Or do you want the pain and disappointment of never even having the opportunity to see a dream fulfilled?
Yeah. Ooh.
So
Ooh.
she kind of lit the fire under my butt. And she said, I didn't need a book proposal. My agent just got me the deal. I was like, well, I don't have an agent like that. She said, I'll introduce you. So she introduces me to her agent. And guess what the agent says to me, Candace?
Go write a proposal.
That's exactly what she said. Go write a proposal. I was so pissed off. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
And I was like, but Lauren didn't need, she said, Lauren's in a different category.
Ooh.
And I was like, I want to be in that category. And then, you know, what I learned is that even best-selling authors, even New York Times best-selling authors, need to write proposals even after they've had a bestseller.
Absolutely.
I have a friend,
Absolutely.
yeah, I didn't know this. I have a friend who's on her fourth book. She's already written three books. One of the three books was hugely
Yeah.
successful. The second book did really well also. You know, like some books are going to be more successful than others. And she's writing a fourth book proposal. You would
Well,
think,
the
hmm,
first book success does not guarantee the fourth book success. And if a
facts.
publisher is going to invest their money, and they do invest money in publishing your book, they want
Mhm.
you to prove to them that this book is going to sell, period.
Exactly. So I wrote the proposal with your help as well. And I remember sitting in on like a webinar for a woman who used to be an editor at the publishing houses. And her webinar was like, I will help you write a book proposal that gets you a $50,000 advance. But no guarantee, but the proposal will be good enough that if someone buys it, then it should be in the $50,000 range. So I hired her to do one of those like read throughs of the proposal. Now, you and I had worked on it, and I already knew I was turning in something really good. But I wanted her lens because she had just left the publishing world, you know, second opinion type thing.
Absolutely.
That was a mistake,
Oh,
Candace.
no.
I'll tell you why. So she reads our proposal and she says to me, this is a good start, but we need at least 6 more months of work.
I remember that.
Is it coming back to you now?
Yes, yes.
I remember thinking to myself, who does this woman think she is? She's crazy. 6 months. And this is the other thing she said. She said, okay, no, let me take a step back. You know, I'm a big journaler. So I
Yeah.
have been journaling that I was going to get a book I was going to get an agent by September and a book deal by December of 2020. This is in the middle of the pandemic, by the way. So she says to me, this is July, August. She's like, oh, I would not even think about putting this proposal out. I wouldn't send it. It's not ready. And I would wait until February of next year because nobody's going to buy a book during the holidays. They don't buy, like the publishing industry shuts down. Nobody buys books in the holidays. And I was defeated.
Oh no.
I felt so deflated and defeated. And I remember talking to you about it, and you were like, well, friend, that's just one person's opinion, you know? And I was like, I know, but this is so stupid, because I'm more passionate about things like that.
A little bit.
I said, well, how much do you think it'll cost me to work with you? And she says, $20,000. Now, listen, I am not afraid of making investments. I have invested in myself many, many, many times over the years, $20,000, $25,000. Yeah. I'm not afraid of that kind of an investment. And I said to her, well, do you guarantee that I'm going to invest this $20,000 and I will get a $50,000 proposal? And she's like, well, I can't guarantee that it's going to get picked up either way, but I know that I will help you write a better proposal.
So you're supposed to invest the $20,000 with no guarantee at all.
And it's just a proposal. It's not even helping me finish the book.
Just for the proposal. And again, if you were starting from scratch, that actually might make sense depending on.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
But you already had a solid proposal.
I had a great proposal already done. So now I don't know if our listeners know, but I did not know this until I was in the game. When you get a book advance, say you get a $50,000 book advance, you don't get $50,000 in your bank account in one shot.
Or ever, actually.
This is true because they can actually shelf it. That's a whole other thing.
Well, your agent gets a percentage off the top.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. The agent gets 15%. 15%. By the way, a friend of mine was telling me that she was talking to an agent who wanted 25%.
That's a no.
I said, run for the hills.
That's a no. I don't even trust that person at that point. Even if they decided to reduce it, the fee is 15%, y'all. It's been that for decades now.
And it is what it is. That has not adjusted for inflation.
No.
Because the book proposal has adjusted for inflation.
Correct. The advance should have adjusted for inflation.
Right. That's what I meant, the advance. So you don't get it in one shot. So let's say you get 50,000. You might get it might be broken down from anywhere from 3 to 4 chunks.
Yeah.
And by the way, that third or fourth payment could be sent a year after the book launches.
Yep, it's true.
So when I started doing the math wasn't mathing, Candace, because when I started doing the math, I realized, wait a second, I'm going to end up paying to write this book. Yeah. So I said, thank you, but no thanks. Long story short, I don't think this was the question you asked me, but here we are, story time.
We're good.
Okay. So I put a notice in a group that I'm a part of, and I'm like, hey, can anybody, this is what's happening? And my girlfriend says, I'm going to connect you to my agent. I can't make you any promises, but she'll at least take a look at it. This was the exact same agent that I had journaled about working with a decade ago. Her name is Michelle, and she's fantastic. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, how did you know who Michelle was in the first place? Because I read the acknowledgement section of every book that I buy first.
Yeah.
I want to know who helped bring this baby to life. Who are the people that I should be paying attention to? Because if they made it to the acknowledgement section of someone's book, they have really withstood the battle. They've
Absolutely.
been with that author. So I already knew of this agent. The agent looks at my proposal. She sends an email. She says, send your proposal. It'll either go to me or my husband if we decide to go with you. Very next day, I get an email. She says, you're with me, kid.
Oh,
it was so cute. We get on a call. She says, who helped you with this proposal? I said, well, I did most of it and I had my writing coach kind of edit it through. She goes, nobody wrote this for you? I said, no, I had help with my writing coach, but she goes, this is great. She said, there are a couple of things I do want you to change because of the way the market is shifting in the publishing world. But this is great. You want people in your corner who think that this work that you're writing is necessary.
Yeah.
It's important. It's fresh. It's whatever. So, once all those little pieces were in motion, I was like, well, I guess I got to write it now. And do you know, Candace? Well, I know you do know that, but listeners, do you know? I signed with my agent in August and I got my book deal in October of 2020, 2 months before my deadline, 6 months before when the original woman even wanted to start marketing me. And it was because I gave myself permission to offend, because I activated my truth, which is what we talk about in chapter 1. My belief was that this work was so good, I should be paid to write it.
Yes.
So I got a book advance, 6-figure book advance, 6 figures.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing that you mentioned, right? You could have questioned your own judgment and just went with what the other woman said. You could have just put the whole thing on hold and said, listen, she's the expert. I've got to follow what she says. But you listen to your gut and look at the result that you got.
Well, and we got that result. And then that's when the next round of real work began, right? So the proposal is like kids play. Now it's like, we got to write this thing. And the first thing I did was call you. I was like, Candace, yay. And
I was on tap, just waiting.
Yes, at the ready. And it was like, yay. But then it was, because as we started writing the book, my acquisitions editor, that's the person that actually buys the book. So I'll just talk about this part as well. So when people are interested, when publishing houses are interested in your book, you'll get on a meeting with them. Sometimes the marketing department will be there, sometimes they won't. In my case, it was the Spanish language department, because not only did they buy the rights in English, but they bought the rights in Spanish. And so now my book is being translated into Spanish. The Spanish language edition is going to be released on April 4th.
Nice.
So just like all the dreams come true.
Yes.
So the acquisitions editor, when we started going through the book, she had a vision for how we could make it very prescriptive. And I was like, well, I want to make it more of a story than prescriptive, because I don't stick with books that are overly prescriptive.
Okay.
For me as a reader, like I'll read it and I'll kind of thumb through it. But if it looks like it's a listicles book, it doesn't become a book I want to read. Yeah. So the proposal, what we submitted in the proposal and the book that I've written, also very different.
Yeah.
And I wish I had known that going into the proposal writing, because that would have freed me up from being so emotionally attached to what I was writing.
So wait, you were saying the acquisitions editor, was it that she pushed you to make it more prescriptive?
She wanted it to be prescriptive. She had a vision for what it was going to be, and it wasn't necessarily my vision. I loved working with her though, so there was good collaboration. But then she ended up leaving. So when my new editor, Sydney, came in, I feel like that's when, between Sydney and her ideas and she loved the book. Yeah. And so as I started sharing with Sydney and hearing her thoughts, and then you and I would have our calls, the book just took on this whole new life.
Yeah.
And this depth that it would never have had if I had written it on my own. In particular, Candace, do you remember? Maybe you don't, but I remember. There was one, it might have even been chapter 1 or 2. It was early in the book. And I needed to finish to like get to the next step. I needed to like finish this one section. And I turned it into you. And I was really excited and proud of myself because I was like, I am done. I don't want to look at this. I want to move on to the next part of the book.
Oh, friend.
You came back and your edits, like first of all, I told you to edit just for reading. And you're out here pointing out commas and periods.
You
And
cannot tell me how to do my job. What? No.
but that's the beauty of having you as a coach, is that you really pushed me. I didn't want to see the apostrophes and the commas because I felt like you're just highlighting everything that I'm not doing right. And I want to be praised and validated. Chapter 6
I
in
was
the
about
book.
to say.
Chapter 5.
Permission to a friend.
I want to be validated. And so at this one time, so you did these edits, and there was this one part, it was definitely chapter 1, and you were like, okay, friend, I understand, but I feel like you need to go give me more. You need to go deeper here. And I was like, no, she either gets it or she doesn't.
Oof.
You know, I'm very defiant. And so my wounded offender, which is again in chapter 4 in the empathetic identity, in the offender identity framework, my wounded offender was out. And I was like, no, she either gets it or she doesn't. And you were so loving yet firm. And you said, no, my friend, that's not how that works. You've got to give the reader something more here. You've got to go in deeper for your reader. As a reader, I would have felt the exact same way.
Yeah.
As the author, I was tired of writing. I was tired of working on the same section over and over and over again. But that is the beauty of having a coach and having a community, like where you're writing. So I had a community. I had my editor. I had you. I had some beta readers, the people that were helping me along the way. As a writer, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
As a reader, I'm so glad that you pushed me, because when I go back and read my book, which I have read now 9 times, I have read this book.
It's probably more than that, but in this incarnation, 9 times.
Right, as it is now. Yeah. As what you would get when you read it when you grab it off the shelf. Yeah. I have read this iteration of it 9 times. I have thousands of pages of old manuscript editions in my garage, so much that it fills 2 of those, pack your things, you got fired boxes. What is that?
You're saving all of those old manuscript drafts? I don't blame you. I would absolutely save them too, but you have them on hard drive too, right?
I'm sure I do.
Just in case. Okay.
Yeah, but so every time I would, remember what I did? I printed out the thing and I sent it to you physically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I love, because I work on paper anyway. So that's not I come from old school that's how you edit, pen and paper. So I love that process.
I needed that in the early stages, right? But there are so many editors that would not even mess around. They're not going to entertain my tomfoolery.
That's their loss.
But the reason I keep those edits is because my notes are in there.
Yeah.
And there are full stories that never made it into this book that I can go into the editing room, the floor, and pick up some of the pieces. And so I'm so grateful for the work that we did together, because this book is a much, much better book. Yeah. Because you were reading. The other thing that you did for me, Candace, and I don't know if I shared this with you, but I'll brag on you for a second.
Okay, we'll take it.
When you were reading it, I remember like you would do the exercises.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then you would come and give me the feedback and tell me where you got stuck. And so it was almost like I was tested. Everything in the book has been tested on clients over a decade of experience, but it's very different to coach a client audibly, the way that we're doing here with the back and forth and having the dialogue.
Right.
Well, this is not a coaching session, but the way that we're dialoguing right now, versus when you write a book, it's very one-sided.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine what the client might say, But then you come in with a whole other fresh perspective. And it forced me to become a better writer as well. Because if it were up to me, I'm comma happy. I'm comma happy and run on sentence Rachel. Just call me that.
That's called first draft. It's supposed to be like that. That's just getting the content on the page.
I feel like that also carried on to second, third, and fourth. And even, okay, here's a fun thing too. As I read the book now, for 8, 9, 10 reads later, I find things I'm like, oh, I wish I would have written this differently. And in chapter 9, there is one sentence that I did not include in the step 3 of the journaling framework that I give.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
know
a
exactly what you're talking about too.
tell me,
Are
you
you
know what I'm
are
Go
you
ahead.
talking about when we're visualizing
Yes.
and visualizing the actual doing, not just the being and
Yes.
having? Yes, I know.
Yes.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking
Oh,
about.
that's such an important nuance.
Yeah.
And but here's the thing. I've taught that nuance for a decade.
Yeah.
But it's so different because when I'm teaching it, I'm way wordier.
Because you
And
can
so
be.
it can be. But when you're writing it, I had not figured out the one wrap it up sentence to be able to include it. And so we lost it. And man, I can't wait for the second edition because that's like I'm going beeline
The
right
one
there.
change that you know you're
One
gonna make.
change that I already know we're going to make. I might remove one entire chapter altogether. I won't tell you which one because I have a stepchild chapter in this, but that's not
Oh,
true. Stepchildren should be loved.
I've got to go look now and figure out which one you're talking about,
There's
which I will.
one chapter that I don't love. And even when I was reading the Audible,
Yeah.
when I was done reading that chapter, I literally did this. Oh my gosh.
Okay,
That
but so that brings us to a good point because you did read the Audible version for your book, but
yes.
with your contract, that was not a given that you would be able to do that. Talk a little bit about that.
Listen, you want to talk about color me surprised? When I saw that in my contract, so by the way, they send you this contract and it is long. And there are all kinds of terms that I did not recognize, which is why it's having an agent that you trust is
Mm.
important, and or a lawyer on deck to read it. Um, in this particular case, I did not hire a lawyer. I really trusted my agent. I trust her implicitly still to this day. But disclaimer, get yourself a lawyer just in case. So as we're looking through, I noticed that it says that the author, if the author wants to read for the audiobook, they must submit an audition tape. Is because even though you might be great at podcasting, phenomenal on stage, you might suck at reading aloud.
Yeah, we've all heard audiobooks that we have returned to Audible because the author sucked at. Yeah, you can return audiobooks. Yeah.
Shut up, audiobook. You know why I don't return books? Because even if they suck, it still was a labor. And I'm on the other side. And I just feel like, you know what, you can have my $25 because at least you tried.
That's my
Um,
general rule, except that with Audible, I treat it a little bit differently. Because if I return the audiobook, I'm just gonna buy the paperback or the Kindle. So it's not like I'm not gonna buy from the author. I'm just gonna buy it in a different format. So
okay. All right. So I can get down with that. There was one book, one hard copy book that I seriously considered marching back to the bookstore.
you're not gonna tell us what it was.
Don't just give me the why in the book.
No.
The if I paid for it, no. The
Yeah.
giving me the why, that's the free stuff.
Yeah.
The webinar, that's the whatever. I will sit through a free webinar for you to tell me why and the mindset shifts I need to make. Of course,
Me too.
100%. I'm not going to pay you $4.97 or $29 or whatever for you to just tell me the what and the why, but not even give me a first step how.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Come
that's
on,
ridiculous. So
come on.
that's not
Like,
happening. I want to go back to Sydney because you mentioned Sydney earlier. When you first started this book, I know there was some question about how much of your faith you could include in the book. Talk a little bit about that journey.
Okay, so I'm a Christian. Candace, you know this. I love me some Jesus.
Me
Um,
too.
okay, yes. So shout out to our Lord and Savior, Jehovah Jireh. Um, and I signed with a non-denominational publisher. So
Non-religious, totally non-religious. Yeah.
HarperCollins, yeah. Harper One actually does, they publish everything
Yeah.
in the like there's spiritual books, there's like um books that I went to HarperCollins a couple weeks ago after the Today Show. By the way, I was on the Today Show. Just um and they tried to give me they like the whole place is books. So every time I author it, they're like, oh, here, have this book, have that book. You go home with a bag of books.
Love
Okay.
it.
Love it. I'm not mad at books. So they try to give me this book on like witchcraft or something or whatever. And the guy's like, oh, you might like this book. I looked at it. I said, oh, no, I won't. I said,
That's
no, say it to
not for
authors.
me.
I'm not going to want this. I don't want this on the plane with me. I don't want that energy. But thank you. He was like, well, what about this one? And I was like, I'll take this one. And it was a book in Spanish. I was like, oh, he's really trying to get me ready for this like Spanish language tour.
It's coming, so you might as well get ready.
I have to start reading and getting my habla español up to speed.
Stop it.
I do speak Spanish, I can. Anyway, so she was, I talked, it was like a light stroke of God, just to say, I'm a Christian, but I'm not trying to convert you. Believe what you want to believe. I don't care. I care that you feel confident and safe to express your truth. That was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Sydney is a believer. And she was like, I'd love for you to add more God in. I'm like, but this is not a Christian book. And I don't want you to put me in the Christian category. I want to be in the personal development category. Because sometimes that's what happens, right? Then you get loopholed. And my ministry, I know this already. I know that my ministry is not limited to working with people who are exclusively Christians. I love Christians, but I have a heart for human beings.
Yeah. We have people in our mastermind who are not Christians
at all.
Yeah.
And I love working with them, and I'm here to serve them. And I don't not talk about God.
And they're fine with it because they know what they're getting when they sign up to work with you. So
because they know that I respect whatever their belief is. So I actually found that to be most difficult, that process of like adding more God in, because one, I wanted it to be organic. I didn't want God to be the afterthought, which at that point he was.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to feel forced, because me personally, like I have a problem when there's like a forced agenda, or when we're gratuitously including things just to fit a narrative. And ultimately, what I landed on was making sure that each chapter began with a Bible verse and like a scripture, and then reading the book again and looking for where I would have credited God, or where I would have naturally brought God into the conversation, and did that. Do you know what was one of the first things I did when I got the book? Because there's an index at the end. I thought, I wonder, how much did I talk about God? How much Jesus is actually in this book?
Was it a lot when you looked in the index?
It was satisfyingly enough.
A good amount.
It what I can't remember what, excuse me, the other word. I looked to see, like, did I talk about God more than I talked about this? I can't remember what the other this word was. Excuse me. But yeah, flip open to it. I know you got it right there.
You've got like 20 mentions of God that I can see from the index.
Yeah. So, it's a 300-page book. So what's that, like every 60 pages or so?
Yeah, I think it would have been a lot easier if you had that direction early on, right? Going back and kind of fitting it in is a little bit harder, but I think you did such a great job of balancing it, right? I don't think you have to be a dyed-in-the-wool Christian to read this book or benefit from it. You're not selling God. You're not pitching God. You're just standing with God as God is manifested in your life.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So
So
good.
that's what we did. That's how we did. And I feel like even after that, she was like, I think we could use a little more God. And I was like, I think we're good.
We're done. She's moving you over to the Christian section. You're going to be next to Joyce Meyer in the bookstore.
Well, but I also understand why, honestly. Like, I'm here to talk about all the things and pulling back the curtain. Why? Because the Christian market buys.
Christian women in
Christian
particular.
buy
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
So if I could have somehow gotten my foot in that door, that this probably would have been a whole, I probably would have made the Wall Street or New York Times bestsellers list with the Christian community. But to be honest, like, I'm not disingenuous. So
Yeah.
I wasn't going to chase that audience for a list. If the Christian community picks this book up and they kind of run with it, that would be amazing. It's for them as well.
Absolutely.
But I was not going to, I don't know, I just wasn't going to be fake and be like, oh, Christian, me, woman of God,
Well,
pick
it's so
me.
funny because you actually live like not like that over the top, but you live very much in your faith, right? It's so integrated in everything that you do. So it's funny to me that you even be worried about it. Like you have an entire program that's based on faith. Like
Yeah, but it's not a Christian
it's not.
faith
It's
program.
not. But when you show up for it, you show up very much in your Christian self.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Don't join any of my programs if you're not okay with me talking about God, or when the internet cuts out for me to say prayer warriors in the
We
name
go
of
into
Jesus.
prayer.
I'm praying, I'm rebuking the enemy, I'm commanding the internet to come back. And so if you're not available for that, then don't come. And that's okay
Yeah.
too. Still love you. You
Yeah.
just
So here's my question for you. A lot of people talk to me about writing a book when their mother has left this world, when they no longer have this job because they're so worried about what other people are going to think, and who's going to be offended by something they put in their book, even if they're not writing about those people, right? My mom doesn't know this side of my life. My coworkers don't know this. So what would you say to those people who are so worried about offending potential readers?
well, I was going to say something smart, but I'll keep that comment to
What would you
myself.
say for later?
I'll save it for later. Listen, I get it. There's a part in the book where I say, let wisdom, not worry, keep you silent. And so, first of all, consider the impact. If you tell this story, is it harmful to them because it's their story that you're trying to tell? Or is it your story as well? And you're sharing your perspective and perception. There are some stories in my life that you will never, I promise you, I will not write about. Why? Because it's not just my story to tell. And I know that if I told it, it would bring embarrassment and shame to someone that I love and care about. And I don't want my work to have that impact on anyone. So I'm never going to tell that story. Or maybe I will tell that exact same story and I will make it someone else's story.
Yeah.
So that's the first part. The second part is have the courage to have the ovaries to have the conversation with the people and say, look, I'm writing this book. This is what I've written about you. I'd like you to read it. And if there's any questions that you have, is if there are any inaccuracies or is there anything that you want to clear up, please let me know. I would be happy to have your side of the story to set the record straight. And if not, this is how it's going to go to print. So actually, I don't know if I had shared this with you, if you remember, but chapter 1 of the book, by the way, when you get my book, Permission to Offend, read the introduction. It is worth reading because I hate introductions. Remember that? I didn't want to write one.
I don't hate introductions, and yours is also great. Like, it's valuable content. Read it, y'all.
Yeah. I wrote one worth reading. I hate introductions. They're usually fluff. It's a
They
whole
are.
bunch. I can't, I don't have time for it. But the publisher made me write one. So we wrote one. But in chapter 1, I open up with a story about my husband and him not listening to me and me feeling frustrated or whatever. And so one of my daughters said, it would be really cool if daddy, at the end of the book, daddy shares his side of the story too. And I was like, that would be really cool. So I went to my husband. I said, hey, do you want to share your side of the story? This is what I've written. And he doesn't like to write. So he looked at me, he was like,
Not
as
really.
in, you want me to, I'll do it, but I don't really want to do it. I said, you don't have to do it. This was a suggestion your daughter came up with. I'm totally fine sticking with my story because I like my side of the story, you
Don't we
know.
all? Yes.
Yeah, I like the way I've written it. And so and he chose not to,
Yeah.
but he was involved in the process. He was given every opportunity before this thing went to print to read it.
Yeah.
If he didn't read it, that's on him, but he had every opportunity. Now, one more thing about this. I forgot, Candace, that my mom did not know about what happened to me, the story that I used for the intro.
Oh,
I forgot.
wow. I didn't realize that.
I didn't realize it either. I forgot.
Wow. Okay.
Um, because it's a story that I have not told often. And it's something that I actually try not to think about at all. So I forgot. So recently, like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I'm talking to when 2 weeks ago, when the book came out and she got her book, she goes, oh, my books have arrived. And then I was about to say what I say to everyone, read their intro, it's worth reading. And then I'm like, oh, by the way, mom, I'm so sorry. I forgot to tell you this. Um, Trigger warning, brace yourself because the intro starts with a very gripping story about something that happened to me that I never told you about. And I'm sorry. I should have told you that this happened. It didn't. And I'm sorry that this is how you have to find out. Or don't
Wow.
read it at all. Just
Or
skip
don't
it,
read it. Yeah.
or don't just skip it, And I'm gonna venture to say that she hasn't read it yet. And because she hasn't said anything to me about it.
She might not
Um,
read it at all.
I hope she doesn't, honestly. I hope she doesn't. I don't want her
But
to.
but if she does, you'll still both be fine.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. It happened.
Correct.
And and then this is the last tip I'll say is that in the acknowledgments, acknowledge the people that let you tell the story the way that you've told it. And I'm almost positive that I said that in the thank you, like thank you for letting me share these stories that involve you.
Yeah.
You know, I did not know a couple actually, oh my gosh, look, I'm gonna get a lump in my throat because this is sad. And it goes to what you're speaking about. Okay, my mom is actually my godmother. Before I was a public anyone, I only ever referred to her as my mom, my mommy.
Yeah.
If we were talking in onesies and twosies conversations, I might tell you my story about that. My biological parents died when my mom died when I was 3.5 years old and she had AIDS. I might tell you that story in one-on-one passing. Well, I can't remember what happened, but I started telling that story a little more because people, as you start to be known, people want to know where you come from. They want to know your background. They start digging around in your stuff,
For sure.
right? And so if you don't want people digging around in your stuff, don't be an author. Don't be an entrepreneur. Don't be a coach. Do not have any presence on social media whatsoever.
Yeah.
That is the only way that you can
Yes.
protect yourself from people digging around. But even then, that's not true because you got nosy coworkers and
Mm-hmm.
neighbors that are over the fences. So if you want to get paid those big bucks, if you want the accolades, this is part of the job.
It is.
It's part of the job. So I began telling my story more, and I did not realize that it was hurting her.
Oh no.
It was hurting her to be constantly referred to as my godmother. And she was grieving a family, the loss of a family member. And she was like very cold with me. And I was like, why are you being this way to me? And like, she just had this moment in her grief. She basically let me know, like, so I'm just your godmother. And I was like, no, you're not. Like, I say all the time, call her my godmother and watch you get punched in the face.
Right.
You heard me. How many times have you heard me say that,
Because this
Candace?
woman raised you like from
This is my
little. This
mother.
is your mother.
Yes, this is my mother, but biologically, someone else gave birth to me. And I do still believe, and I maintain this, I have to honor that woman.
Well, absolutely.
And I have to give her credit because she gave me life. But I also do say that my mother, my godmother, my mom that raised me, she saved my life because my biological mother wanted to abort me. And I give my mom credit for saving my life all the time. But we did have that moment where her feelings were hurt.
Yeah.
People's feelings are going to be hurt. They don't have to stay hurt.
So what you're saying is you're either willing to take the risk or you're not at this point.
Yeah, I guess that's a nice short way to say it.
Well, no, you said the other things that were necessary too, right? Talk to people and let them know this is happening. Don't share things that you know could really be shaming or embarrassing to people you love and care about. And if it's their story, for sure. But at the end of the day, you're either willing to take the risk of being public with parts of yourself or you're not.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
You did. Paying off.
Nailed it.
Paying off in a great book. Oh my God. Okay, my friend, I could talk to you all day, but we have exceeded our time. So tell the people where they can find you if they don't already know you and follow you.
Well, since you're already listening to a podcast, go ahead and subscribe to my podcast called Permission to Offend. It's available where all podcasts are streamed. So while you're listening on your device, go ahead and search it up. You will see me and my face and a hot pink cover. You can visit me at rachelluna.com. And for sure, I would love for you to grab a copy of my book, Permission to Offend, The Compassionate Guide for Living Unfiltered and Unafraid.
Thank you, my friend. You are just one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. Not just favorite clients, not just favorite coaches, but favorite people. I'm so glad you came on today.
Thank you, friend. I love you. Can't wait to start working on book number 3.
I'm ready when you are.